The autumn wind carried dust and dead leaves through the streets of Independence, Missouri, as Silas Kane stood outside the jailhouse, rolling a cigarette between his weathered fingers. He'd arrived at dawn, his duster coat still damp from crossing the Missouri River at first light. The marshal had sent word 3 days prior. A simple job. Good money. Transporting a female prisoner to Montana Territory. "She's in there," Marshal Hutchins said, nodding toward the heavy oak door. "Name's Evelyn March, widow of Senator Cornelius March." The marshal spat tobacco juice into the dirt. "You heard about him?" Silas shook his head. Politics meant nothing to a man who spent most of his years sleeping under stars and dodging Apache raids. "Found him dead in his study 2 months back. Peculiar circumstances." Hutchins unlocked the door. "She ain't been formally charged with nothing yet. That's why she's heading to Montana, to wait while they investigate. Got family connections up there, supposedly." The jail was dim and smelled of mold and despair. Silas had seen plenty of lockups in his 40-odd years, but this one felt different. Too quiet, too clean, like they'd prepared it special. She sat on the narrow cot in the last cell, her back straight as a church pew, even in the poor light. Silas could see she wasn't what he'd expected. No tears, no trembling. She wore a dark traveling dress, modest but well-made, her auburn hair pinned up proper. When she turned to look at him, her green eyes held something he couldn't name, not fear, not anger, but a kind of careful calculation. "Mrs. March," the marshal said. "This here's Silas Kane. He'll be taking you north." She stood slowly, gathering a small carpet bag. "Mr. Kane." Her voice was educated, controlled, Eastern accent, maybe Philadelphia or Boston. "I trust you're a man of discretion." Silas said nothing. Discretion was part of the job. Outside, he'd already prepared the horses, his own gray gelding, Pike, and a brown mare for her. She studied the mare with those sharp eyes before mounting side saddle with practiced ease. No complaints about the long ride ahead. No questions about comfort. That was the first thing that set him uneasy. They rode out as the town was waking, passing merchants opening their shops and women sweeping their stoops. Some stopped to stare. Word traveled fast in a town like Independence. Everyone knew about the senator's widow. 5 miles out, Silas finally spoke. "We'll follow the river road to St. Joseph, then cut northwest through Iowa Territory. Weather holds, we'll make Montana in 18 days. Whatever you think best, Mr. Kane." She kept her eyes forward, gloved hands steady on the reins. The first day passed in relative silence. Silas had transported prisoners before, men who cursed and threatened, women who wept and pleaded. Evelyn March did neither. She rode without complaint through the October chill, stopping when he stopped, eating the cold biscuits and jerky without comment. But he caught her watching him sometimes, studying him like she was reading a map. As dusk approached, they made camp in a grove of cottonwoods near a creek. Silas went about the routine, unsaddling horses, gathering wood, setting up the small canvas shelter he'd brought for her. She stood by her mare, stroking its neck, seemingly lost in thought. "There's a creek just past those rocks," he said. "If you need to. That is, for washing up." A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "How considerate, though I suspect such niceties will fade after a few days on the trail." While she was gone, Silas built the fire and started coffee boiling. The familiar tasks calmed him, but something still felt off. He'd learned to trust his instincts over the years. They'd saved his life more than once. And right now, they were telling him this job was more complicated than the marshal had let on. She returned as darkness fell. Having removed her jacket and unpinned her hair, it fell past her shoulders, catching the firelight. She'd rolled up her sleeves to wash, and he glimpsed marks on her wrists before she quickly pulled them down. Old marks. Rope burns, maybe, or worse. "Coffee," he offered, filling 2 tin cups. She accepted with a nod, settling on a flat rock near the fire. For a long moment, they sat in silence, listening to coyotes calling in the distance. "Do you believe in the significance of timely death? Mr. Kane? She asked suddenly. The question caught him off guard. Can't say I've given it much thought. My husband did. He used to say death was God's way of balancing the ledger. She stared into the flames. He was quite philosophical about death, less so about life. Silas shifted uncomfortably. He'd expected tears or protests of innocence, not this strange, detached philosophy. Ma'am, whatever happened back there, it ain't my business. My job's just to get you to Montana safe. Safe. She repeated the word like she was tasting it. What a curious concept. Later, as he laid out his bedroll at a respectful distance from her shelter, he watched her shadow moving against the canvas. She was undressing for sleep, and he turned away sharply, angry at himself for looking. He'd been too long without a woman's company if a prisoner, a possible murderess, could stir such thoughts. But as he lay staring at the stars, he couldn't shake the image of those marks on her wrists, or the way she'd said the word safe like it was foreign to her. He'd transported killers before, men and women both. They all had a look about them, a hardness or a wildness. Evelyn March had neither. What she had was worse, the careful control of someone who'd learned to hide everything, even from herself. The fire burned low, casting dancing shadows. From her shelter came the sound of restless movement, then a soft murmur he couldn't make out. Nightmare, maybe, or prayer. He'd known plenty of guilty folks who prayed, but he'd known innocent ones who had nightmares, too. 3 days into the journey, they encountered their first real challenge. The autumn rains had swollen Cedar Creek into a rushing torrent. The usual crossing was impassable. We'll have to go upstream, Silas decided, studying the banks. Find a narrower spot. They rode for 2 hours before finding a place where the creek narrowed between high banks. Even there, the water ran swift and dark. Silas went first, testing the depth. Pike was a steady horse, used to river crossings, but even he snorted nervously at the current. Stay close behind me, he called back. Keep her head up? Evelyn nodded, gathering her skirts and urging the mare forward. Halfway across, the mare stumbled on the rocky bottom. For a moment, it looked like they'd both go under, but Evelyn kept her seat, speaking softly to the horse, guiding it with surprising skill to the far bank. You ride well, Silas observed as she wrung water from her skirts. My father kept horses, before. She didn't elaborate on before what, that night, camped on a rise overlooking the prairie. She seemed different, less guarded, maybe, or just tired from the difficult crossing. When he handed her the usual supper of hardtack and dried beef, she actually smiled. You know what I miss most? She said. Tea, proper tea in china cups, with sugar and cream. Might find some in the next town. Brady's Station's 2 days north. No. The smile faded. Best we avoid towns when possible. He wanted to ask why, but didn't. Keeping questions to himself was another part of the job. Later, as he was banking the fire for the night, she emerged from her shelter. She'd removed her outer dress to let it dry, wearing just her chemise and petticoat. The firelight played across her bare arms, highlighting more scars he hadn't noticed before. These were different thin lines across her shoulders, old but precise. She saw him notice and pulled her shawl around herself. You're wondering about them. Not my business, ma'am. No, I suppose it's not. She moved closer to the dying fire. Tell me, Mr. Kane, what kind of man takes a job transporting women to uncertain fates? The kind that needs the money. Is that all? She studied his face in the fading light. No curiosity about whether you're delivering an innocent woman to injustice or a guilty one to escape it. Justice ain't my department. I deliver what I'm paid to deliver. How refreshingly simple. There was no mockery in her tone, just a kind of weary acceptance. I used to believe in justice, before I learned it could be bought and sold like everything else. She returned to her shelter, leaving Silas alone with the dying embers and his growing unease. He'd told himself this was just another job, but nothing about Evelyn March was simple. Not the way she carried herself despite being a prisoner, not the scars she bore like secret histories, not the way she asked questions that had no safe answers. As he settled into his bedroll, he found himself thinking about those marks on her shoulders. Whip marks, most likely. Old ones. The kind that came from systematic punishment, not random violence. What kind of senator left such marks on his wife? And what kind of wife endured them until she didn't? The coyotes were closer tonight, their calls echoing across the empty land. Silas kept his rifle close, though he knew the real dangers on this trail wouldn't announce themselves with howls. They'd come quiet, like whatever had driven Evelyn March to run, like whatever was driving her still. Tomorrow they'd reach the edge of Iowa Territory, where the land grew wilder and the law grew thinner. He'd done this run dozens of times, knew every waterhole and danger spot, but for the first time in years, Silas Kane found himself uncertain about what lay ahead. Not the trail, he knew that well enough, but the woman in the shelter, with her educated voice and scarred skin, her careful control and dangerous questions. She was uncharted territory, and despite all his years of keeping to the job, of delivering what he was paid to deliver without questions or complications, Silas had the sinking feeling that this time would be different. This time, the cargo might just deliver him somewhere he'd never meant to go. The Iowa Territory stretched before them like a sea of brown grass, rippling in the cold wind. They'd been riding for 6 days now, and the easy silence of the first days had given way to something else, a tension that seemed to grow with each mile they put between themselves and Missouri. Evelyn had taken to riding alongside him rather than behind, and Silas found he didn't mind the company. She was different from any woman he'd known, educated. Yes, but there was something else, a darkness in her that matched his own. Maybe, or maybe he was just getting soft, letting a pretty face cloud his judgment. "Tell me about the women who were burned," she said suddenly, breaking a long silence. They were passing through a stretch of abandoned homesteads, the burned-out shells of cabins standing like black teeth against the horizon. "What women?" Silas asked, though he had a feeling he knew where this was going. "The witches. Though they weren't witches, were they? Just women who knew too much, or said too much, or refused too much." She guided her mare around a prairie dog hole. "My husband kept a book about the Salem trials. He found them fascinating. The way fear could turn neighbor against neighbor, husband against wife. That was 200 years ago, ma'am. Different times." "Are they?" She turned those green eyes on him. "Tell me, Mr. Kane, if a woman today knew secrets about powerful men, secrets that could destroy them, what do you think would happen to her?" "I think she'd be smart to keep those secrets to herself, even if keeping them meant living in hell." Silas didn't answer, couldn't answer, because he was starting to understand that whatever Evelyn March was running from, it was bigger than a dead husband. That night they camped near a small creek, sheltered by a stand of elm trees. The temperature had dropped, and Silas built the fire larger than usual. Evelyn sat close to it, wrapped in her traveling cloak, but still shivering. "Storm coming," Silas observed, reading the sky. "We'll need better shelter by tomorrow night." As if in answer, the wind picked up, sending sparks from the fire dancing into the darkness. Evelyn pulled her cloak tighter, but he could see her trembling. "There's an old trading post about 10 miles north," he said. "Abandoned now, but the roof's still good. We could—" "No." The word came sharp and quick. "No trading posts, no towns, no people. Ma'am, if you catch pneumonia out here, then I catch pneumonia." She met his eyes across the fire. "There are worse things than dying of natural causes. Mr. Kane, far worse." The rain started near midnight, a cold, steady drizzle that found its way through every gap in their shelters. Silas lay awake, listening to it patter on the canvas, trying not to think about Evelyn March shivering in her tent. She hadn't made a sound of complaint, but he knew she had to be miserable. Finally, he couldn't stand it. He rose, grabbed his extra blanket, and approached her shelter. "Ma'am, Mrs. March, I'm awake." Her voice was small, muffled. "I'm coming in, just to give you another blanket." He pushed through the tent flap and found her huddled in the corner, soaked through despite the shelter. Her teeth were chattering, and in the dim light, she looked younger, more vulnerable than he'd yet seen her. Here, he draped the blanket around her shoulders, trying not to notice how his hands lingered a moment longer than necessary. "You'll freeze without it," she protested weakly. "I've slept through worse." He started to leave, but her hand caught his sleeve. "Stay, just for a moment, please." Against every instinct, every rule he'd set for himself, Silas sat. The space was cramped, forcing them close. He could smell her hair, lavender soap. Somehow, even after days on the trail, "If you're afraid of me," she whispered, "you're no different from them." "I'm not afraid of you." "Then what?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Maybe I'm afraid of myself." She shifted, turning to face him in the darkness. "Do you know what my husband used to say? That women were like horses, beautiful to look at, useful to own, but requiring a firm hand to break them properly." Silas felt his jaw clench. "Your husband sounds like he was a bastard." A soft, bitter laugh. "A bastard with connections. A bastard who sat on committees and passed laws and decided the fates of other women. A bastard who could smile at a governor's ball and then—" She trailed off. "Then what?" Instead of answering, she took his hand and placed it on her shoulder. Over the fabric, even through the wet cloth, he could feel the raised ridges of scars. 27, she said quietly. "I counted 27 times he took the strap to me, for speaking at dinner parties, for reading the wrong books, for refusing to sign papers giving him control of my father's estate, for 1,000 small defiances that added up to one large one." Silas found himself holding his breath, his hand still on her shoulder. "The night he died," she continued. "He'd been drinking, more than usual. He came to my room with documents, papers that would have committed me to an asylum. Said I was hysterical, delusional. All he needed was my signature, or failing that, the testimony of his physician friends that I was too unstable to manage my own affairs. What did you do? I said no, and when he raised his hand to me again, She pulled away from his touch. Does it matter what I did? A wife belongs to her husband, body and soul. That's the law. So tell me, Mr. Kane, if property defends itself, is that murder or justice? The rain hammered harder on the canvas. Silas knew he should leave, should maintain the professional distance that had kept him alive and uncomplicated all these years. Instead, he heard himself saying, "My wife died 10 years ago. Fever took her while I was away, guiding settlers through the Rockies. I used to tell myself it was just bad luck, but the truth is I chose the trail over her. Every time. And now I deliver other men's wives to their fates and tell myself it's just a job." "We all have our ghosts," Evelyn said softly. They sat in silence, listening to the rain, close enough that he could feel her warmth despite the cold. Finally, Silas forced himself to move. "I should go. Let you rest." "Yes," she agreed, but neither of them moved for another heartbeat. Then, too, when he finally returned to his own bedroll, now soaked through. Silas lay awake thinking about the weight of her hand on his sleeve, the sound of her voice counting scars. He'd been hired to deliver her to Montana, but he was beginning to understand he'd been hired to deliver her to something specific, something that had nothing to do with justice and everything to do with keeping secrets buried. The next days passed in a blur of gray skies and muddy trails. They spoke more now. Careful conversations about books and horses and the changing landscape. Never about husbands or scars or what waited in Montana. But the awareness between them grew with each shared meal, each accidental touch as he helped her mount her horse. 3 days after the rain, they saw the dust cloud. Silas spotted it first, a brown smudge on the horizon, moving parallel to their path. Could be buffalo, could be settlers, could be trouble. "We're being followed," Evelyn said. It wasn't a question. Maybe, maybe not. But Silas was already calculating distances, checking his rifle. "We'll swing north, see if they follow." They did. For 2 days. The dust cloud maintained its distance, never closing but never falling back. Evelyn grew quieter, more watchful. At night, She barely touched her food. "Who are they?" Silas finally asked. "Men who don't want me to reach Montana. Or rather, don't want me to reach anywhere I might talk to the wrong people." She stared at the distant dust. "My husband had partners. Business associates who shared his interests. They have as much to lose as he did, more, now that he's gone." "What kind of interests?" She was quiet so long he thought she wouldn't answer. "Then, there's a house in St. Louis. Looks respectable from the outside. Inside." She wrapped her arms around herself. "Young women go in, broken women come out. If they come out at all, my husband called it a training facility. For domestic servants, he said, but the kind of training that went on there." Silas felt sick. He'd heard rumors of such places, whispers in saloons and trail camps. But to have it confirmed, to know the men who ran them were senators and businessmen. "You have proof?" "I have names, dates, financial records I copied before that last night, hidden where they'll never find them, unless I tell someone where to look." Now he understood. She wasn't being transported to await trial. She was being transported to disappear. "Why didn't you tell the marshal? The real law?" Her laugh was bitter. "The marshal's salary is paid by the city council." "Guess who sits on the city council?" "No, Mr. Kane. There is no law for women like me. There's only what we can take for ourselves." That night, Silas made a decision. When Evelyn emerged from her shelter to wash at the stream, he didn't turn away. She knew he was watching as she loosened her hair, as she unbuttoned her collar to wash her neck. Their eyes met across the firelight, and something passed between them. An acknowledgement, a permission, a crossing of a line they'd both seen coming. "You could leave me," she said quietly, still by the water. "Ride off tonight. Tell them I escaped. No one would blame you." "That what you want?" She moved closer, water still glistening on her skin. "What I want hasn't mattered for a very long time. It matters now." She stopped just out of reach, searching his face. "Why? Why do you care what happens to some runaway wife who may or may not have killed her husband?" Silas stood slowly, closing the distance between them. "Because you're right. There are worse things than dying of natural causes. And any man who'd put those scars on you deserved whatever he got." Her breath caught. For a moment, they stood frozen, the fire crackling beside them, the vast prairie darkness all around. Then she whispered, "They'll kill you too, if you help me. I've been needing to die for something worthwhile for a long time now." She raised her hand to his face, tracing the lines that years of sun and wind had carved there. "You're not what I expected, Silas Kane. Neither are you, Evelyn March." The kiss, when it came, was inevitable as sunset, soft at first, then desperate, full of loneliness and fear and a sudden, fierce need to feel alive. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, the world felt different, smaller and larger all at once. "This is dangerous," she whispered against his chest. "Everything about this job's been dangerous since the moment I saw you." She pulled back to look at him. "I mean it. If this, they'll use it against us. Say I seduced you, corrupted you. It's what they always say about women like me. Let them say it." His arms tightened around her. "I know the truth." "The truth?" She laughed, but it was softer now, less bitter. Such a rare commodity these days. They stood there, holding each other in the firelight, while somewhere in the darkness their pursuers made camp, and somewhere in Montana, men waited to ensure Evelyn March's secrets died with her. But for this moment, beside this fire, two damaged souls found something they'd thought lost forever. The possibility that they might not have to face the darkness alone. Tomorrow would bring its own dangers. Tonight, they had this, the first real thing either had felt in years. It wasn't much against all the forces arrayed against them, but it was enough. For now, it was enough. The settlement of Willow Creek sat like a scab on the landscape. A dozen weathered buildings clustered around a muddy main street, servicing the wagon trains that still pushed west. Silas had planned to skirt around it, but they needed supplies. And Evelyn's mare had thrown a shoe. "Keep your head down," he murmured as they rode in. "We get what we need and get out." The blacksmith was a mountain of a man named Josiah, arms like tree trunks and a face scarred from years at the forge. He barely glanced at Evelyn, focusing on the mare's hoof, but at the general store, things went different. They were picking up coffee and ammunition when Silas heard it, a low whistle followed by crude laughter. 3 men lounged against the counter, trail dust thick on their clothes, eyes fixed on Evelyn like wolves eyeing a lamb. "Well, well," the largest said, a gap-toothed specimen who smelled of whiskey and sweat. "Lady like you shouldn't be traveling with just one man for protection. Dangerous country out here." Evelyn kept her eyes on the shelf of goods, but Silas saw her shoulders tense. "Especially for a woman matches a certain description we heard about. Runaway wife, they say. Substantial reward for her return." The man pushed off from the counter, moving closer. "You wouldn't know anything about that, would you, darlin'?" "The lady's with me," Silas said quietly, hand drifting to his sidearm. "That's so?" Gaptooth grinned wider. "And what's she to you? Mister, don't look like no wife of yours." The tension in the store thickened. The shopkeeper disappeared into the back room. Smart man. "She's under my protection. That's all you need to know." "Protection." The man laughed. "That what they're calling it now? Tell me, does she show you them fancy Eastern manners at night? Bet a woman like that knows tricks." Silas moved faster than thought. His fist connected with the man's jaw with a crack that echoed through the store. Gaptooth went down hard, crashing into a display of canned goods. The other 2 reached for their guns, but Silas already had his Colt out, hammer cocked. "Don't! Your friend runs his mouth. He pays the price. You boys want to join him. That's your choice." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then the 2 men helped their groaning companion to his feet. "This ain't over," one muttered as they stumbled out. Silas turned to find Evelyn staring at him, something unreadable in her eyes. "Why?" she asked softly. "Nobody talks about you that way, not while I'm around." She stepped closer, oblivious to the shopkeeper now peering around the doorframe. "You could have just let it pass. Avoided trouble. Some trouble's worth having." Outside, she touched his hand as he helped her mount. "You're going to get yourself killed defending my honor. If I'm going to die, might as well be for something that matters." They left Willow Creek at a gallop, Silas watching their back trail. Those men would talk, and word would spread. Their quiet journey was about to get a lot more complicated. That night, they camped in a grove of cottonwoods beside a narrow stream. The October moon was nearly full, painting everything in silver and shadow. They'd been riding hard, putting distance between themselves and town, and both horses needed rest. As Silas tended the fire, Evelyn surprised him by settling beside him rather than retreating to her shelter. She'd unpinned her hair, and it caught the moonlight like copper. "Tell me about her," she said. "Your wife." Silas poked at the fire, sending sparks spiraling upward. "Mary. Her name was Mary. Prettiest girl in Independence, and smart enough to know she could do better than a trail guide. But she married me anyway. She loved you. She loved the idea of me, I think. The romance of it. But the reality..." He shrugged. Reality was me gone 8 months of the year, coming home smelling of horses and other men's ambitions. Reality was her waiting, always waiting. Evelyn drew her knees up, wrapping her arms around them. "My marriage was arranged, a business transaction between my father and Cornelius. I was 17, educated just enough to be interesting at parties, but not enough to be troublesome, or so they thought. What changed? I learned to read between the lines. In his papers, his correspondence, I discovered what kind of man I'd been sold to, and once I knew..." She shook her head. "He said knowledge was dangerous for women. He was right about that, at least." A coyote howled in the distance, answered by another. Silas added more wood to the fire. "Those men today," Evelyn said. "They'll report seeing us. Probably already have. Then they'll know which direction we're heading. They'll cut us off before we reach Montana. Silas had been thinking the same thing. There's another route, through the Badlands, rough country, but it'd throw them off our trail. Whatever you think best. She turned to look at him. You're risking everything for someone you barely know. Why? He met her gaze. Maybe because for the first time in 10 years, I've found something worth the risk. She moved closer, and he caught that scent of lavender again. Faint, but persistent. I need to tell you something. About that night. About what really happened. You don't owe me explanations. Yes, I do. She took a breath. He came to my room with the commitment papers. Said I'd sign them or he'd have me declared insane anyway. When I refused, he tried to force himself on me. Said it was his right as a husband to take what was his. Silas's hands clenched into fists. There was a letter opener on my desk. Silver, a wedding gift from my aunt. When he tore my nightdress. When he pushed me down. Her voice was steady, but tears tracked down her cheeks. I didn't mean to kill him. I just wanted him to stop. But the blade went in so easily, right between his ribs. He looked so surprised. Evelyn, I watched him die. The words came faster now. Watched the blood pool on my bedroom floor. And do you know what I felt? Relief, pure, blessed relief. What kind of woman feels relief watching her husband die? Silas reached out, gently turning her face toward him. The kind who survived hell and lived to tell about it. The law won't see it that way. Then the law's wrong, she laughed, short and bitter. The law's written by men like him, for men like him. Not all men are like him. No, she agreed, studying his face. Not all. The kiss was softer this time. Less desperate than before, but no less meaningful. When they parted, she stayed close, her forehead resting against his. I should go to my tent, she whispered. You should. Neither moved. If this goes further, it changes everything, she said. Everything's already changed. She pulled back to look at him. I mean it, Silas. If we cross this line, there's no going back. They'll use it against both of us. Say I seduced you to help me escape. Your reputation? My reputation's worth about as much as a Confederate dollar. Yours is what matters. Mine was destroyed the moment I raised that letter opener. She touched his face. All I have left is the truth. And the truth is, I haven't felt alive since that night. Until now. Until you. The fire had burned low, casting them in intimate shadows. Somewhere in the darkness, an owl called. The world felt very far away. I won't take advantage, Silas said roughly. You're under my protection. I don't want your protection right now. Her voice was fierce. I want to choose, for once in my life. I want to choose for myself. She stood, holding out her hand. After a moment, Silas took it, letting her lead him to her shelter. Inside, filtered moonlight created a private world. She turned to face him, hands steady as she began unbuttoning his shirt. Are you sure? He asked. I've never been more sure of anything. What followed was gentle and fierce by turns, two wounded souls finding solace in each other. She traced his scars as he had traced hers, each mark a story of survival. When she cried out, it wasn't from pain but from the overwhelming sensation of being truly alive after so long in darkness. Afterward, they lay entwined, listening to each other breathe. Silas pulled a blanket over them, marveling at how right she felt in his arms. What happens now? She asked against his chest. Now we sleep. Tomorrow, we ride. Day after that, too. And when we reach Montana, he was quiet for a long moment. I've been thinking about that. The man waiting for you, is he Law? No, a friend of my husband's, another senator, Theodore Blackwood. Silas knew the name, knew the reputation, too. Then we don't go to him. She propped herself up on an elbow. But your job, my job was to deliver you to Montana. Nobody said anything about delivering you to Blackwood? He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. There's a mission near Fort Benton. Progressive folks. They take in women needing sanctuary. We could— Silas? Her voice was soft. They'll come after you. Ruin you. Let them come. He pulled her back down. I've made my choice. Evelyn, question is, what's yours? She was quiet so long he thought she'd fallen asleep. Then, my choice is to stop running. To use what I know to burn their whole damned enterprise to the ground. Even if it costs me everything. Not everything, he said. Ozty. Not if I have anything to say about it. My protective cowboy, she murmured, a smile in her voice. What did I do to deserve you? Survived, he said simply. That's enough. They slept then, wrapped in each other and in the fragile hope that somehow, against all odds, they might carve out a future together. Outside, the night stretched on, full of the usual dangers, wolves and weather and the men hunting them, but inside the small shelter, for these precious hours, two people who'd forgotten how to trust found faith in each other. The fire died to embers. The horses shifted restlessly, sensing dawn's approach. Soon they'd have to rise, to face whatever the day would bring. But not yet, not just yet. In the gray hour before dawn, Silas woke to find Evelyn watching him, her fingers tracing lazy patterns on his chest. Regrets? He asked. Never. She kissed him softly. Whatever happens, I'll never regret this. We're going to make it, he said. Both of us, together. Promise? I promise. It was a promise he meant to keep. No matter what waited on the trail ahead, he'd spent 10 years delivering other people's dreams and nightmares. Now, finally, he had a reason to fight for his own. The days that followed passed like a dream. They rode through country that grew wilder with each mile, red rock canyons and sage-covered hills, streams running clear and cold from the mountains. The threat of pursuit hung over them, but somehow it only made each moment more precious. Evelyn had changed. The careful control she'd maintained was softening, replaced by something more natural. She laughed at Silas's trail stories, helped with the horses without being asked, and at night came to him without hesitation. They made love under stars so bright they seemed close enough to touch, and afterward talked in whispers about impossible futures. When I was a girl, she told him one night, wrapped in his arms beside a dying fire, I wanted to be a teacher. Can you imagine? Me, shaping young minds? Don't see why not. You're smart enough. Smart women make poor wives, according to my late husband. She traced patterns on his chest. But maybe they make good teachers. Maybe when this is over. You'll be a fine teacher, Silas said. Best those children could hope for. She rose up to look at him. You really believe we'll have after, don't you? I do. Even knowing what's coming, even knowing who's after us? He pulled her back down. Especially then. Man's got to have faith in something. I choose to have faith in us. On the 10th day out from Willow Creek, the first snow began to fall, fat, lazy flakes that dusted the ground and clung to Evelyn's eyelashes. She tilted her face up, catching them on her tongue like a child. I'd forgotten, she said, what it felt like to find joy in small things. Silas watched her spin in the falling snow, her traveling cloak billowing, and felt his heart clench. He'd been alone so long he'd forgotten what it meant to fear losing someone. Now, the thought of anything happening to her made him cold in a way that had nothing to do with weather. That night they sheltered in a cave. The horses picketed just inside the entrance. The snow had thickened, becoming a proper storm, and Silas was grateful for the protection. He built their fire deep in the cave, where the smoke could dissipate through cracks in the ceiling. Evelyn sat beside him, combing out her hair. It had grown wilder on the trail, less constrained by pins and propriety. Everything about her seemed less constrained now. Tell me about Fort Benton, she said. About this mission. Sacred Heart, run by French nuns. But they're not like what you'd expect. Sister Margaret, she's the Mother Superior. She was married once. Husband beat her near to death. She understands what women sometimes have to do to survive. And they'd really take me in, knowing what I've done? They'll take you in because of what was done to you. There's a difference, She set down the comb, moving closer to him. And then what? I hide there forever? Just until we figure out our next move? Those documents you mentioned. We get them. Find someone in authority who can't be bought. There's got to be someone. Maybe. She didn't sound convinced. Or maybe we just disappear, find some place so remote nobody would think to look. That what you want? She considered. A month ago. Yes, but now. She looked at him. Now I think about all the other women trapped like I was. Women who don't have a Silas Kane to help them escape. Maybe I owe them the truth, whatever it costs. You don't owe anybody anything, don't I? She moved into his lap, straddling him, hands framing his face. You risked everything for me. Maybe it's time I risk something for others. He pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her. Let's just get you safe first. Then we can save the world. She kissed him, soft and deep. My practical cowboy, always thinking one step at a time. It's how you survive out here. I'm learning that. She began unbuttoning his shirt. Among other things, they made love slowly, savoring each touch, each whispered endearment. The storm howled outside their cave, but inside was warmth and safety, and the temporary illusion that they were the only two people in the world. It was afterward, as they lay tangled in blankets, that they heard the horses whinny nervously. Silas was on his feet instantly, reaching for his gun. Stay here, he whispered. He crept to the cave entrance. The snow had stopped, leaving the world white and silent under a half-moon. At first, he saw nothing. Then, movement in the trees, a flash of metal. He barely had time to shout warning before the shots rang out. Evelyn, get back! The cave erupted in chaos. Men poured from the tree line. 5, maybe 6. Silas fired, saw one drop, fired again. A bullet whined past his ear. Chipping stone. Kane! A voice bellowed from outside. Send out the woman and you can ride away. This ain't your fight. Like hell, Silas shouted back, reloading. More shots. The horses screamed, pulling at their pickets. In the muzzle flashes, Silas caught glimpses of their attackers. Hard men, professional guns. Not random bounty hunters. These were Blackwoods men. Silas, Evelyn's voice, frightened but steady. She dressed hastily and found his rifle, was loading it with practiced movements. I told you to stay back, and I told you I make my own choices. She moved up beside him, sighting down the rifle. How many? Too many. A lull in the firing. Then that voice again. Mrs. March, Senator Blackwood sends his regards. He's eager to discuss your late husband's affairs. Come quietly, and nobody else has to die. Go to hell, Evelyn shouted, and punctuated it with a shot that sent the men diving for cover. Spirited, the voice laughed. Your husband always said you had too much spirit. Seems he was right. The attack resumed with renewed fury. Bullets filled the air like angry hornets. Silas felt one tug at his sleeve, another clip his hat. They were pinned, outgunned. It was only a matter of time. The back of the cave, Evelyn said urgently. Those cracks in the ceiling, some are big enough to squeeze through. We'd have to leave the horses. Better than leaving our lives. She was right. Silas laid down covering fire while she gathered what supplies she could. His ammunition was running low. A few more minutes, and they'd be overwhelmed. Go, he shouted. I'll hold them. Not without you. Evelyn, no! She grabbed his arm. We go together or not at all. A lucky shot from outside ricocheted deeper into the cave, striking their pile of supplies. The saddlebags fell open, spilling their contents. Among them, Silas saw something that made his heart stop. A bundle of papers, tied with string. Evelyn's evidence. She saw it too, started toward it. Leave it. But she was already moving. A figure appeared in the cave mouth. A lean man with a scarred face and dead eyes. He raised his pistol, aiming at Evelyn's back. Silas didn't think. He threw himself forward, tackling Evelyn aside. The bullet meant for her caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He hit the cave floor hard, gasping. "Silas!" Through the pain, he heard Evelyn scream, heard her rifle speak once, twice. The scarred man stumbled backward, clutching his chest, but more were coming. "Get the papers," Silas gritted out. "Go! I'm not leaving you. You have to." He struggled to sit up, managed to raise his Colt. "That evidence, other women depending on it. Go!" Tears streaming down her face. Evelyn grabbed the papers. Silas fired at the cave mouth, driving the attackers back momentarily, long enough for her to help him to his feet. Together, they stumbled deeper into the cave, following the faint air current. Behind them, shouts and footsteps. The cracks Evelyn had noticed were there, narrow but passable. She went first, squeezing through. Silas followed, his wounded shoulders screaming protest. They emerged on a snowy ledge, the ground dropping away steeply below. No way down without ropes. But along the cliff face, a narrow trail led into darkness. "Can you make it?" Evelyn asked, pressing her hand against his shoulder, trying to stem the bleeding. "Do I have a choice?" They fled along the ledge, Silas leaning heavily on Evelyn. Behind them, cursing and gunshots as their pursuers discovered the escape route. But the narrow trail worked in their favor. The men had to come single file. The path ended at a frozen stream, its far bank thick with pine forest. They slid down to the ice, Silas nearly passing out from the pain. Made it across just as the first pursuer appeared on the ledge, into the trees, stumbling through snow and darkness. Silas's legs were going numb. He knew he was leaving a blood trail, knew they couldn't outrun their hunters much longer. "There," Evelyn pointed. An old trapper's cabin, barely visible among the trees. Abandoned, by the look of it. But shelter. They crashed through the door. Evelyn barred it while Silas collapsed against the wall. She was beside him instantly, tearing at his shirt to examine the wound. "It's bad," she whispered. "I know. I can get the bullet out, but—" No time. Already, they could hear men coming through the forest. "You have to go. Take Pike. He's tied out back of the cave. They might not have found him. Get to Fort Benton. Find Sister Margaret." "Stop talking like that." She was crying again, her hands gentle on his face. "We're getting out of this, both of us. Both of—" "Evelyn, no, you promised. You promised we'd make it together." He caught her hand. "I promised to keep you safe. This is how I do it." Don't you dare be noble now." "Not noble. Selfish." He managed a weak smile. "Want you to live. Want you to be that teacher. Want you to have all those things we talked about. None of it means anything without you." The door shuddered under heavy blows. They'd found them. "The window," Silas said. "Back window. Go." "I love you," she said fiercely. "Do you hear me? I love you. Silas Kane. I love you too. Now go, please." One last kiss, desperate and full of anguish. Then she was moving, grabbing the papers, slipping through the back window just as the door began to splinter. Silas dragged himself upright, checked his Colt. 3 bullets left. He'd make them count. The door crashed open. Men flooded in, guns drawn. Silas fired, saw one fall, fired again. A third shot, but his vision was blurring. He thought he hit someone, then they were on him, boots and fists. He heard Evelyn scream from outside, tried to call out to her. A rifle butt caught him in the temple, and the world went dark. His last thought was a prayer, not for himself, but for her. Let her escape, let her live. Let something good come from all this blood and pain. Then nothing but black silence, and the snow falling soft and steady through the broken door. Pain brought Silas back to consciousness, a throbbing in his head, fire in his shoulder. He was lying on something soft. Buffalo robes? The air smelled of smoke and herbs, unfamiliar but not unpleasant. He tried to open his eyes, managed to crack them enough to see firelight dancing on a low ceiling. A figure moved nearby, and a weathered face came into view. An elderly Indian woman, her hair silver white, eyes kind but ancient. "Rest, white man," she said in accented English. "The wound spirits still fight inside you. Where?" His voice came out as a croak. "Safe. My grandson found you in the snow. 2 days past." 2 days. Evelyn could be anywhere by now. Captured, dead, or... He forced himself to hope free. The old woman helped him drink some bitter tea that eased the pain. As the days passed, he learned her name was Morning Crow, that her small band had wintered in these mountains for generations. Her grandson, Joseph, had been checking trap lines when he found Silas half frozen in a snowbank a mile from the cabin. "The men who hurt you," Morning Crow said one evening, replacing his bandages. "They searched for many days, but the snow, she hides all trails." "A woman," Silas managed. "Auburn hair. Was there—" "No woman, only you, and much blood." She studied him with those knowing eyes. "This woman, she is your heart?" "Yes." "Then she lives. The heart knows when its match stops beating." Silas wanted to believe her. During the long nights, fevered and healing, he dreamed of Evelyn, sometimes in their cave, warm and laughing, sometimes running through snow. Blackwood's men closing in. He'd wake calling her name. Slowly, his strength returned. Joseph, a quiet young man who'd learned English at a mission school, brought news from the settlements. Senator Blackwood had men everywhere, searching for a runaway woman. Rewards had been posted from Missouri to Montana. "But no one has claimed this reward," Joseph added. "The woman, she is like smoke. Hope, painful and persistent, bloomed in Silas's chest. After 3 weeks, he could walk without support. Morning Crow declared him healed enough to travel, though she warned against it. "Your body mends, but your spirit still bleeds," she said. "This path you choose, it leads to more blood. I have to find her." "Yes," she agreed sadly. "The heart demands what it demands." Joseph guided him down from the mountains, a day's careful travel on borrowed horses. At the edge of the foothills, they parted ways. "The mission at Fort Benton," Joseph said. "If your woman is wise, she goes there. Sister Margaret, she helps many who run from bad men." Silas clasped the young man's hand. "I owe you my life. Pay the debt by living it well." Fort Benton sprawled along the Missouri River, a rough collection of warehouses, saloons, and trading posts. Silas kept his hat low, aware that Blackwood's men might be watching. The mission sat on the eastern edge of town, a modest collection of buildings behind a low adobe wall. Sister Margaret was not what he'd expected. Tall and raw-boned, with calloused hands and direct gray eyes. She looked more like a frontier woman than a nun. She received him in a simple office that smelled of beeswax and leather. "Mr. Kane, I've been expecting you." His heart leapt. "She's here?" She was. The nun's expression was carefully neutral. "She arrived 2 weeks ago, half frozen, clutching a bundle of papers like they were the Gospels themselves. Told me quite a story." "Where is she now?" Sister Margaret rose, walked to the window. "Mr. Kane, what are your intentions toward Mrs. March?" "I intend to keep her safe, to help her get justice. And if justice isn't possible, if the men she opposes are too powerful, then we disappear, find somewhere they can't reach." The nun turned back to him. "She said you'd say that, said you were a good man who deserved better than a life on the run. Let me be the judge of what I deserve." "Indeed." Sister Margaret studied him. "She left 4 days ago, said she had something to finish, and she couldn't do it hiding behind convent walls." Silas's blood ran cold. "Where did she go?" "Helena, the territorial capital. There's a federal prosecutor there, James Morrison, one of the few honest men in government, or so they say. She took her evidence to him, alone. I tried to dissuade her, even offered to send sisters as escort, but she said she'd put enough people at risk." The nun's expression softened. "She left something for you." From her desk, she withdrew an envelope. Silas's name was written across it in Evelyn's careful hand. Inside, a single sheet. "My dearest Silas, if you are reading this, then Morning Crow was right. The heart knows when its match stops beating, and mine tells me you live. I pray you'll forgive me for leaving. but I could not bear to wake another day knowing that monsters walk free because I chose safety over justice. By the time you read this, I will have presented my evidence to Prosecutor Morrison. Whatever follows, arrest, trial, or worse, I face it freely. You gave me that freedom, showed me I could choose my own path. This is my choice. Do not follow me. You have bled enough for my cause. Live, my love. Find peace. Know that the days we shared were the truest of my life. Forever yours. Evelyn Silas crumpled the letter, then smoothed it out. Read it again. How long to Helena? Mr. Kane. How long? Sister Margaret sighed. 2 days by stage, but you should know. Senator Blackwood arrived in Helena last week. He has many friends there. Then I'd better hurry. The nun reached into her desk again, withdrew a leather pouch. She left this as well. Said you'd need traveling funds. Silas recognized it. Evelyn's emergency money, hidden in her saddlebags. I can't take her money. You can't help her without it. Pride, Mr. Kane, is a luxury neither of you can afford right now. She was right. Silas pocketed the pouch. Thank you, sister. Don't thank me. Just find her before... She stopped herself. Before what? Before Helena's streets run red. The men she threatens, they've killed for far less than what she knows. The stagecoach to Helena left at dawn. Silas spent the night in a boarding house, unable to sleep, cleaning his guns and thinking. Evelyn had 4 days' lead, but she'd be moving carefully. A woman alone. He might still reach her in time. The coach was full, a mining engineer, 2 merchants, a salesman, and a nervous woman who clutched her purse like it held her life savings. Silas took an outside seat, preferring the cold wind to the close quarters below. They followed the Mullen Road, winding through valleys turned gold with autumn grass. At every way station, Silas asked about a woman traveling alone. Most hadn't seen her. But at Dearborn, the hostler remembered. Pretty lady, auburn hair, yeah, she came through. Took a meal but didn't stay the night. Seemed in a powerful hurry. How long ago? 2 days, maybe 3. So close. Silas climbed back aboard, willing the coach to move faster. They reached the outskirts of Helena as the sun touched the western mountains. The territorial capital sprawled across Last Chance Gulch, a boomtown trying hard to become respectable. Brick buildings shouldered between wooden shacks, and the streets teemed with miners, merchants, and men who looked like neither. Silas went straight to the federal building, a 2-story stone structure that looked solid enough to withstand siege. The clerk at the front desk, a thin man with nervous eyes, shook his head at Silas's inquiry. Prosecutor Morrison? He's been in meetings all day. Big case, they say. Can't be disturbed. Is there a woman with him? Auburn hair, green eyes. The clerk's expression changed, became carefully blank. I wouldn't know about that, sir. Silas leaned across the desk. Listen to me. That woman's in danger. If she's here... Is there a problem? A new voice, cold and cultured. Silas turned to find a well-dressed man flanked by 2 hard-looking companions. Everything about him screamed wealth and power. No problem. The clerk stammered. This gentleman was just leaving. I don't think so. The man studied Silas with pale, reptilian eyes. Would you be Silas Kane, by chance? Silas's hand drifted to his gun. Who's asking? Theodore Blackwood. I believe we have a mutual acquaintance. His smile was thin as a blade. Walk with me. Mr. Kane, we have much to discuss. I'll stand right here. Thanks. Oh, I think you'll walk. Blackwood nodded to his men, who opened their coats to reveal badges. Unless you'd prefer Deputy Marshals Cobb and Murray arrest you for aiding a fugitive, the choice is yours. Trapped. Silas had no doubt the badges were real, bought and paid for, but real enough. He followed Blackwood outside, the deputies close behind. Mrs. March has been telling the most extraordinary stories, Blackwood said conversationally as they walked. Tales of murder and corruption, terrible accusations against respected men. If they're just stories, why are you worried? I'm not worried, Mr. Kane. I'm disappointed. You see, I offered Mrs. March a generous arrangement, safe passage to California, a comfortable stipend, a chance to start over. All she had to do was return certain papers and maintain her silence. And she refused. Most unwisely. Blackwood stopped walking, faced Silas directly. But you strike me as a practical man, someone who understands that idealism is expensive and the price is usually paid in blood. What do you want? I want you to convince Mrs. March to accept my offer. She trusts you. A word from you might succeed where threats have failed. She's here then. She's safe. For the moment. Blackwood's smile was winter cold. But safety is such a fragile thing. Accidents happen, even in federal custody. Rage rose in Silas's throat. You touch her. I won't have to. You see, Prosecutor Morrison is an honest man, but he's also a careful one. He'll want corroboration, witnesses, a case strong enough to convict. That takes time, and time, Mr. Kane, is something Mrs. March doesn't have. You're going to kill her. Me? Certainly not. But Helena is a dangerous city. Why, just last week, a witness in a fraud case fell down some stairs. Tragic accident. And the week before, a woman preparing to testify about assault simply vanished. These things happen. Silas measured the distance between them, calculated whether he could draw and fire before the deputies reacted. Probably not. Blackwood seemed to read his thoughts. Don't be foolish. Think of her. A word from you. And she lives. Refuse. And... He shrugged eloquently. I want to see her first. Of course, Morrison's keeping her at the Planters Hotel, under guard. Room 47. You have until dawn to convince her. After that, another shrug. After that, I wash my hands of the matter. The deputies escorted Silas to the hotel, a 3-story building with pretensions to grandeur. Room 47 was on the top floor, at the end of a long hallway. A federal marshal sat outside, chair tipped back, reading a newspaper. He's expected, one of the deputies said, and the marshal waved Silas through. She was standing by the window when he entered, silhouetted against the dying light. For a moment, neither moved. Then she turned, and he saw her face, thinner than before, shadows under her eyes, but alive, beautifully. Blessedly alive. Silas. Just his name, but it held everything. He crossed the room in 3 strides, pulled her into his arms. She came willingly, clinging to him like a drowning woman to shore. For long moments they just held each other, relearning the solid reality of flesh and bone after so many nights of dreams and fears. I thought you were dead, she whispered against his chest. I saw the blood. So much blood. Takes more than Blackwood's hired guns to kill me. He pulled back to look at her. Why did you run? Why didn't you wait? Because waiting meant hiding, and hiding meant they won. She touched his face. I couldn't live knowing I'd had the chance to stop them and chose safety instead. And Morrison? Will he help? Her expression darkened. He wants to, but Blackwood's reach is long. 2 witnesses have already recanted. Another disappeared entirely. Without them, it's your word against powerful men. Yes. She moved away, back to the window. Morrison says he needs more time, more evidence, but we both know I don't have time. Blackwood came to see me. He's offering safe passage to California. I know. He made the same offer yesterday, and the day before. She laughed bitterly. He seems to think repetition will change my answer. Silas joined her at the window. Below, Helena's streets were lighting up for the night, saloons and gambling halls coming alive. Somewhere out there, Blackwood's men were waiting. Maybe you should take it, he said quietly. She spun to face him. What? The offer. California's far from here. We could disappear, start over. We? Her eyes searched his. After everything, you'd still come with me? Did you think I'd let you go alone? She was in his arms again, kissing him with desperate hunger. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she said, I can't. Don't you see? If I run now, they win. And they'll keep winning. Keep destroying lives. Your life matters too. Does it? More than the girls in those houses? More than the next woman who tries to stand up to them? She shook her head. I have to see this through, whatever it costs. Silas knew that tone. It was the same one she'd used that night in the cave, when she'd chosen to risk everything for those papers. The same steel that had kept her alive through years of abuse. Then we see it through together, he said. No, you've done enough. We've had this argument before. I didn't like how it ended. He touched his shoulder. Still tender. Together. Evelyn, that's the only way I'm doing this. Tears filled her eyes. Stubborn man. Stubborn woman. They held each other as full dark fell over Helena. In a few hours, Blackwood would want his answer. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought, justice or death or something in between. But tonight, they had each other. For now. That was enough. I love you, Evelyn said softly. Whatever happens tomorrow, I need you to know that these weeks with you, they've been worth everything. They're not over, Silas said firmly. We're going to find a way through this. Both of us. She didn't argue, just held him tighter. Outside, the city went about its rough business, unaware that in a small hotel room, two people were preparing to take on an empire built on suffering and silence. Dawn would come soon enough, bringing Blackwood's ultimatum. But for these precious hours, Silas Kane and Evelyn March had what they'd fought so hard to find each other, and the choice to face whatever came next together. Dawn came too soon, painting Helena's streets in shades of gray and gold. Silas had spent the night planning, thinking through possibilities while Evelyn slept fitfully beside him. Now, as she dressed behind the changing screen, he checked his weapons one more time. You don't have to do this, she said, emerging in her traveling dress. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, but her chin was set with determination. Yes, I do. He strapped on his gun belt. Got word to some old friends last night, men I rode with during the range wars. They're not saints, but they're loyal. Silas, 3 of them, Jake Thornton, Will Savage, Tom McKenna. They owe me their lives from different times. Figure it's time to collect. He checked the loads in his Colt. They'll be at Murphy's saloon by now. A knock at the door interrupted them. The federal marshal peered in. Prosecutor wants to see you both. Now. James Morrison's office was cramped and smelled of pipe tobacco. The prosecutor himself was younger than Silas expected, maybe 35, with the earnest look of a man who still believed law books could save the world. Papers covered every surface, and dark stains on his shirt suggested he'd been working through the night. Mrs. March. Mr. Kane. He didn't rise, just gestured to chairs. I've been reviewing the evidence again. The documents you provided are damning, but without witnesses, they're just paper. Evelyn finished. I'm afraid so, and with Senator Blackwood's arrival, my remaining witnesses have developed convenient memory problems. Morrison rubbed his eyes. I want to help you, truly, but bringing charges I can't prove would only ensure these men walk free forever. So what do you suggest? Silas asked. Morrison hesitated. There might be another way, less official, but perhaps more effective. He lowered his voice. There's a reporter, Samuel Garrett from the Chicago Tribune. He's in town investigating political corruption, if your story were to reach him, with the documents. A newspaper story isn't justice, Evelyn said. No, but it's harder to silence a newspaper than a witness, and public outrage has a way of forcing official action. Morrison slid a card across the desk. Garrett's staying at the Grand Hotel. What you do with that information is your choice. They left the federal building to find the morning streets already busy, miners heading to claims, merchants opening shops, and among them, Silas spotted at least 3 men trying too hard to look casual. Blackwood's watchers. We're being followed, he murmured. I know. Evelyn's hand found his. Where are your friends? Close. But first, we need those papers. Where are they? Morrison has copies. The originals are hidden at the hotel. She squeezed his hand. Room 47, behind the washstand. They walked casually. Just another couple out for morning air. But at the corner of Main and Broadway, Silas steered them into an alley. Their followers cursed, running to catch up. Jake Thornton stepped out of a doorway, rifle leveled, a mountain of a man with scarred hands and a gap-toothed grin. "Morning, boys. Fine day for a walk." The followers stopped short. One reached for his gun, thought better of it when Will Savage appeared on a roof above, also armed. Tom McKenna emerged from behind a rain barrel, completing the trap. "Silas Kane," one of the followers said. "Mr. Blackwood wants to talk. Tell Blackwood he can wait." Silas kept moving. Evelyn beside him. "We've got business elsewhere. He won't like that. Then he can add it to his list of disappointments." They left Blackwood's men under guard and hurried to the hotel. The clerk barely looked up as they climbed to Evelyn's room. Behind the washstand, wrapped in oilcloth, were the documents that could bring down an empire of exploitation. "Now what?" Evelyn asked, clutching the bundle. "Now we make sure these reach that reporter. Then we get you somewhere safe while the story breaks." "Silas, no arguments. Not this time." They were halfway down the stairs when the shooting started. Glass shattered. Wood splintered. Silas shoved Evelyn behind a pillar as bullets filled the air. Through the chaos, he glimpsed uniformed men, more bought deputies, flooding the hotel lobby. "Kane!" Blackwood's voice, amplified by rage. "You've overplayed your hand." Jake Thornton's rifle answered from somewhere above. Then Will's, then Tom's. The hotel became a battlefield, guests screaming, diving for cover. "Backstairs!" Silas shouted over the noise. They ran, Evelyn holding tight to the papers. Behind them, the gunfight intensified. They burst out the back into an alley, nearly colliding with a slight man in spectacles. "Mrs. March?" The man's voice was educated. "Eastern. Samuel Garrett, Chicago Tribune. I believe you have a story for me." Even in their desperation, Silas almost laughed. Morrison had done more than suggest. He'd arranged this meeting. "Mr. Garrett," Evelyn gasped. "These documents can wait. First, we need to get somewhere safe. My buggy's around the corner." They ran again. Garrett surprisingly quick for a man who lived by his pen. The buggy was there as promised. A driver already at the reins. They scrambled aboard as more shots echoed from the hotel. "The train station," Garrett ordered. "Quickly!" The buggy lurched into motion. Through the small back window, Silas saw riders emerging from the hotel, Blackwood's men, regrouping for pursuit. "Your friends?" Evelyn asked. "They know how to disappear. It's us they'll follow." Garrett was already scanning the documents, his eyes widening. "My God, these names. This is bigger than I imagined." "Big enough to get us all killed," Silas said. "You sure you want this story?" "Want it. This is why I became a journalist." Garrett looked up. "But you're right about the danger. Once this prints, these men will have nothing left to lose." The train station came into view, a modest building with a single platform. The morning eastbound was there, steam up, preparing to depart. "I have a private compartment," Garrett said. "We can—" The buggy lurched as a bullet took out a wheel. They skidded, tipped, crashed into a water trough. Silas pulled Evelyn clear as riders thundered toward them. "Run!" They sprinted for the train. Garrett clutched the documents. Evelyn held her skirts. Silas covered their retreat. His Colt spoke twice, 3 times. Riders went down, but more kept coming. 20 yards from the train. 10. Silas felt a bullet pluck at his coat. Another whine past his ear. Then they were at the steps, scrambling aboard as the whistle shrieked. "Go!" Garrett shouted at the conductor. "For God's sake, go!" The train lurched into motion. Slow at first, achingly slow. Blackwood's men rode alongside, still firing. Windows shattered. A woman screamed. Then, suddenly, the shooting stopped. Silas looked back to see why. Federal marshals, real ones, were flooding the platform. Morrison had come through after all, using the gunfight as cover to move his loyal men into position. Blackwood's hired deputies were throwing down their weapons, hands raised. The train gathered speed. leaving Helena behind, in Garrett's compartment. They collapsed onto velvet seats, breathing hard. "It's not over," Evelyn said quietly. "No," Garrett agreed. "But it's begun. This story will run in Chicago within the week. After that," he smiled grimly. "After that, Senator Blackwood and his associates will have bigger problems than chasing you." "Where will you go?" Silas asked Evelyn. She looked at him, surprised. "Where will we go? You mean—" "Evelyn, if you say I should leave for my own good, one more time, Silas Kane, I'll shoot you myself." Despite everything, she smiled. "We're past that now. Whatever comes next, we face it together." Garrett cleared his throat. "If I might suggest, I have contacts in San Francisco, publishers who'd be very interested in a first-hand account of your experiences. Mrs. March. The full story, told in your own words. A book? Why not? The public loves a scandal, especially one with a brave heroine and a stalwart protector." He glanced at Silas. "No offense, Mr. Kane, but you're straight from Central Casting." Evelyn laughed, the first genuine laugh Silas had heard from her in days. "A book, can you imagine? After everything—" "You wanted to be a teacher," Silas reminded her. "Maybe this is how you teach. Show other women they don't have to accept." He was interrupted by her kiss, sudden and fierce, when they parted. Garrett was studiedly examining his notes. "San Francisco," she said. "Yes, I think I'd like to see the ocean." The train rolled on, carrying them away from Helena and toward an uncertain future. But for the first time since that night in the cave, Silas felt hope, real hope. Not just desperate wishing. They'd exposed the corruption. The documents were safe with Garrett, who'd guard them with his life. A good story was a journalist's religion. Morrison would handle the legal battles to come, and somewhere behind them, 3 loyal friends were melting back into the territory's wild places, their debt repaid. "What are you thinking?" Evelyn asked, nestled against his shoulder. "I'm thinking San Francisco's a long way from Missouri." "Good. I'm thinking the ocean might be nice to see." "Better? I'm thinking—" He paused, then plunged ahead. "I'm thinking a woman writing a book might need a husband, for respectability." She sat up, eyes wide. "Silas Kane, is that a proposal?" "It's a suggestion. Could make it more formal if you'd prefer." "I would prefer." But she was smiling, eyes bright with tears. He slid from his seat, knelt in the swaying compartment. "Evelyn March, you've led me through gunfights and snowstorms, made me break every rule I ever set for myself, and somehow made me glad for it. Would you do me the honor—" "Yes." She pulled him up, kissing him soundly. "Yes, of course yes." Garrett applauded, grinning. "Now that's an ending readers will love. The triumph of love over corruption. Justice over power. It's not an ending," Evelyn corrected. "It's a beginning." She was right, Silas thought, holding her close as the Montana landscape rolled past the windows. Everything they'd been through, the fear, the pain, the desperate flight, had led to this moment. Not an ending, but a chance to start over. Clean and honest and free. The train whistle sounded, lonely and wild, carrying them toward whatever waited in San Francisco. But Silas Kane, who'd spent 10 years running from his past, found he was finally ready to run toward a future. And Evelyn March, who'd learned too young that safety was an illusion, had discovered something better than safety, someone to stand beside when the storms came. Together, they watched the sun climb higher, burning away the morning mist. Behind them lay blood and broken laws. Ahead waited the vast Pacific, and stories yet to be written, and a life neither had dared dream possible. The eastbound train carried many passengers that October morning, miners and merchants, dreamers and schemers, all the varied humanity of the frontier. But none traveled with lighter hearts than the woman who'd killed a monster and the man who'd helped her escape the consequences. They'd found each other in darkness and emerged into light, scarred but not broken, wanted but not caught, free to write their own ending to a story that had begun in chains. And if that wasn't justice, Silas thought, it was something better. It was hope, and for two people who'd forgotten how to hope, that was miracle enough. The train carried them east for 2 days before they doubled back, taking a southern route through Colorado territory to throw off pursuit. Samuel Garrett left them in Denver, promising the story would run within days. He took the original documents, leaving Evelyn with copies she'd hidden in her clothing. When this publishes, he'd said at parting, Theodore Blackwood won't be able to buy a meal in Chicago, much less a judge. Now, Silas and Evelyn rode a stagecoach toward Sacramento, from where they'd take the railroad to San Francisco. The other passengers were a Mormon family heading to establish a store, and they kept to themselves, leaving the couple in relative peace. "Do you think it's really over?" Evelyn asked one evening as they stopped at a way station. "The running part, maybe the rest." Silas pulled her closer on the bench. "Men like Blackwood don't give up easy, but once that story's out, he'll have bigger problems than us." She was quiet for a moment. "I keep thinking about the women in those houses, the ones who can't run. Your story might help them, show people what's really happening. Might," she didn't sound convinced, "or it might just be another scandal for people to gossip about over tea." That night at the station, they registered as Mr. and Mrs. Kane. The lie felt natural now, a promise of what would soon be true, but as they prepared for sleep, Evelyn seemed restless, pacing their small room. "What is it?" Silas asked. "I need to go back." He sat up. "What?" "Not to stay, but there's someone I left behind." She turned to face him. "In St. Louis, at one of those houses, there's a girl, Maria. She helped me once, when Cornelius brought me there to show me what happened to disobedient wives." Silas felt cold. "He took you there, just to look, to see the broken women and understand that's where I'd end up if I didn't comply." Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled. "Maria was the one assigned to give me the tour, but instead of frightening me, she slipped me a key, told me where Cornelius kept certain papers. She risked everything to help a stranger, and you want to help her back. I have to. She's only 16, Silas 16, and already broken by those monsters. If I can save even one." He rose, went to her. "Then we save her. After San Francisco, after things calm down, we go back and we get her out. You mean it? I told you. Whatever comes next, we face together." She kissed him then, fierce with gratitude and love. They made love with the desperate passion of people who'd faced death and chosen life, who knew how fragile happiness could be. 3 days later, they reached Sacramento. The city bustled with commerce from the goldfields, and nobody looked twice at another travel-worn couple. At the railroad station, they bought tickets for the morning train to San Francisco. That night, in a proper hotel with clean sheets and hot water, Evelyn luxuriated in her first real bath in weeks. Silas sat by the window, keeping watch out of habit, but his mind was on the future, a house by the ocean. Maybe children someday, a life neither of them had dared imagine. "Silas," her voice brought him back. "There's something else I need to tell you." Something in her tone made him turn. She stood in her nightgown, backlit by lamplight, looking younger and more vulnerable than he'd ever seen her. "That night, with Cornelius, I didn't tell you everything." "You don't have to." "Yes, I do. No secrets between us. Not anymore." She took a breath. "He didn't just try to force himself on me. He succeeded. Before I could reach the letter opener, before I could stop him." Silas was across the room in 2 strides, but she held up a hand. "Let me finish, please." She wrapped her arms around herself. "Afterward, he was distracted, satisfied with his victory. That's when I reached the opener. That's when I struck. Not in self-defense, but in revenge. The law would see it differently. The law be damned. But you see, I'm not the innocent victim people want me to be. I'm a woman who killed her husband after, not during. That changes things." Silas gently took her shoulders. "Changes nothing? Not for me. How can you say that? Because I know you. Know what you survived. Any man who'd do that to his wife deserves whatever he gets, before, during, or after. She searched his face. You really mean that? Every word. This time, when she came into his arms, it was with relief so profound she shook with it. They held each other as the Sacramento night deepened outside. Two souls who'd found grace in the most unlikely place. The next morning brought troubling news. A newspaper boy hawked papers on the platform, shouting about corruption and scandal in Montana territory. Garrett's story had broken, but not quite as planned. Look at this, Evelyn said, scanning the front page. They're calling it allegations, unsubstantiated claims, and Blackwood's already issued a statement denouncing it as the ravings of a deranged widow. Give it time, Silas said, but he felt uneasy. Once people read the details, will they, or will they just see another hysterical woman making accusations against respected men? She crumpled the paper. I should have known. The truth only matters if people want to hear it. The train ride to San Francisco passed in subdued silence. The coastal hills rolled by, green from winter rains, but neither of them paid much attention to the scenery. At each station, Silas bought newspapers, tracking the story's progression. Some papers supported Evelyn's claims, others dismissed them. The battle for public opinion had begun. San Francisco rose from the bay like a fever dream, houses climbing impossible hills, ships crowding the harbor, wealth and poverty side by side in chaotic splendor. Garrett had arranged rooms at a boarding house run by a widow named Mrs. Chen, who asked no questions and kept a clean establishment. For a week, they tried to settle into something like normal life. Silas found work at the docks, honest labor that paid enough to keep them while they planned their next move. Evelyn began writing her account, filling pages with careful script each evening. Then the letter came. Mrs. Chen brought it up one evening, eyeing them curiously. Delivered by a man who wouldn't give his name, said it was urgent. Evelyn's hands shook as she opened it. Her face went white as she read. What is it? Silas demanded. Wordlessly, she handed him the letter. The writing was precise, educated. Mrs. March, your recent fabrications have caused considerable distress to respectable families. Such lies cannot go unanswered. You should know that your young friend Maria has been relocated to a more secure facility, where she will remain until you publicly recant your false accusations. Should you refuse, or should you continue spreading your poison, I fear the conditions of her confinement will deteriorate rapidly. Young women in such places often succumb to illness, accident, or despair. It would be tragic if Maria joined their number. You have 1 week to issue a full retraction. The choice, as always, is yours. T.B. He has her, Evelyn whispered. Because of me, he has her. We'll get her back. How? We don't even know where she is now. And if we try? She sank into a chair. He'll kill her, just to prove he can. Silas read the letter again, fury building with each word. Blackwood had found the perfect leverage, not threatening Evelyn directly, but an innocent girl who'd already suffered too much. What do you want to do? He asked. I don't know. She looked lost, older suddenly. If I recant, everything we've done is for nothing. Garrett risked his career. Morrison risked his position. You risked your life. But if I don't, if you don't, a 16-year-old girl pays the price. Yes. They sat in silence as darkness fell over San Francisco. Somewhere out there, a young girl was captive because she'd shown kindness to a stranger. The mathematics of justice had never been crueler. There's another way, Silas said finally. What? We take her back. Not negotiate, not surrender. We go get her. Silas, we don't even know where she is, and Blackwood will be watching. Then we make him tell us. His voice was cold, determined. Man like that, he's got to have weaknesses, business interests here in California, people he cares about. We've been playing defense, time to go on the attack. You're talking about war. He declared it when he took that girl. Question is, do we fight back or let him win? Evelyn stood, paced to the window. The gas lamps were coming on, turning the city into a constellation of ground-level stars. When she turned back, her face was set with the same determination he'd seen that night in the cave. "We fight, but we do it smart. No more running blind." She moved to her writing desk, pulled out fresh paper. "First, we find out everything about Blackwood's operations here. Properties, associates, habits. Then we make our move. I know some people, men from the gold camps who've gone semi-respectable. They'll help, for a price. Then pay them, whatever it takes." She began writing, making lists. "And Silas, when we find Maria, we don't just free her. We free them all. Every girl in every house Blackwood owns." "That's a tall order." "Yes, it is." She looked up at him, green eyes blazing. "But I'm tired of half measures, tired of running. If we're going to war, let's make it count." Over the next 3 days, they gathered intelligence. Silas's dock connections proved invaluable. Men who moved goods knew everything about the city's hidden economy. Gradually, a picture emerged. Blackwood had investments in several boarding houses near the Barbary Coast, places that catered to specific tastes and charged accordingly. "The main house is on Pacific Street," Silas reported. 3 stories, guards at every entrance. That's where they'd keep someone they wanted secure. Then that's where we start." But before they could move, a second message arrived. This time, it came with proof. A photograph of Maria, clearly recent, showing new bruises on her young face. "Time's running out," the message read. 3 days remain." Evelyn stared at the photograph, tears running down her face. "She's just a child." "Not anymore," Silas said grimly. "Hasn't been for a long time, but we'll get her back." "When?" "Tonight, before they expect it, before they can hurt her worse." They spent the day preparing. Silas cleaned his guns, bought extra ammunition. Evelyn surprised him by producing a small pistol of her own. "Where did you get that?" "Mrs. Chen. Seems she has her own opinions about men who hurt women." She checked the loads with practiced ease. "I've been practicing while you were at work." As dusk fell, they dressed in dark clothing, the respectable couple who'd taken rooms at Mrs. Chen's vanished, replaced by 2 people who'd learned that sometimes justice came from gun barrels, not courtrooms. "Ready?" Silas asked. "No," Evelyn admitted. "But that's never stopped us before." They slipped out into the San Francisco night. Somewhere across the city, a young girl waited in captivity. Somewhere. Theodore Blackwood thought he'd won. He was about to learn otherwise. The war for Maria, and for all the others, was about to begin. The Pacific Street house stood like a festering wound in San Francisco's flesha, 3 stories of false elegance hiding true horror. Silas studied it from across the street, noting the guards at front and back, the barred windows on the upper floors. Beside him, Evelyn was a shadow in dark wool, her face pale but determined. 2 men at the front, 1 at the back, he murmured. "More inside, certainly." "The girls will be on the 3rd floor," she said. That's how Cornelius's places were arranged, locks on the outside of doors. They'd brought help 3 dock workers Silas trusted, men who'd lost sisters or daughters to places like this. Tom Murphy, a giant Irishman with scarred knuckles. Luis Vasquez, quiet and deadly with a knife. Chen Wei, Mrs. Chen's nephew, who knew these streets like his own heartbeat. "We go in fast," Silas instructed. "Tom and Luis take the back. Chen Wei watches the street. Evelyn and I go through the front." "And if Blackwood's inside?" Tom asked. "Then we have a conversation," Silas said grimly. At midnight, they moved. Tom and Luis slipped around back while Silas and Evelyn approached the front. The guards were bored, passing a flask between them. They never saw Silas coming until his gun butt connected with the first man's skull. The second started to shout, but Evelyn's pistol pressed against his temple silenced him. "Inside," she ordered. "Quietly." The entry hall was all red velvet and gilt mirrors, designed to impress and intimidate. A woman appeared from a side room, older, hard-faced, with a look of management. "We're closed," she began, then saw the guns. "What is this?" "Maria," Evelyn said. "Where is she?" "I don't know any—" Evelyn moved faster than thought, pressing her pistol under the woman's chin. "I'm not playing games. The girl Blackwood sent here." "Where?" Something in Evelyn's eyes. Perhaps the recognition of one survivor seeing another who'd chosen the wrong side made the woman talk. "Third floor, room 12, but you'll never—" Silas was already moving, taking the stairs 3 at a time. Behind him, he heard Tom and Luis entering through the back. Shouts of alarm from deeper in the house. Time was running short. The 3rd floor was a nightmare of narrow halls and locked doors. From behind them came muffled sounds, crying, pleading, worse. Silas's rage built with each step. 12, Evelyn said, stopping at a heavy door. The lock was industrial grade, meant to withstand desperate attempts at freedom. Silas shot it off. Inside, Maria huddled in a corner. The photograph hadn't done justice to her condition. At 16, she looked ancient, all hope beaten from her dark eyes. When she saw Evelyn, confusion flickered across her bruised face. "Mrs. March, but—" "How?" "We're getting you out," Evelyn said, helping her stand. "All of you." That's when the shooting started downstairs. "Move," Silas ordered. But Evelyn was already at the next door, shooting off locks. Other girls emerged, some Maria's age, some younger, all bearing the marks of systematic cruelty. "The back stairs," Maria said, voice stronger now. "There's a servant's stair. We can—" Well. Theodore Blackwood stood at the main staircase, flanked by 2 armed men. He looked smaller than Silas had expected, but his pale eyes held the casual cruelty of a man who'd never faced consequences. "Mrs. March, I'm disappointed. I gave you a chance to be reasonable." "Reasonable?" Evelyn stepped forward, shielding the girls. "You call this reasonable? I call it business." Blackwood's smile was thin. "These girls provide a service. Their families are compensated. Everyone benefits. Except the girls. Property rarely has opinions worth considering." He nodded to his men. "Kill Kane. Bring Mrs. March. The merchandise can be replaced." Everything happened at once. Silas shoved Evelyn aside as bullets filled the air. His Colt roared answer. Taking down one of Blackwood's men, the other dove for cover. In the chaos, Evelyn herded the girls toward the servants' stairs Maria had mentioned. "Go!" Silas shouted, laying down cover fire. But Blackwood had drawn his own weapon, a pearl-handled revolver more suited to display than battle. His first shot went wide. His second caught Silas in the side, spinning him into the wall. "Silas, get them out!" Through pain-blurred vision, Silas saw Evelyn torn between escape and returning to him. Then Maria grabbed her arm, pulled her toward the stairs. "Good girl," Silas thought. "Save who you can." Blackwood advanced, reloading with practiced ease. "You know, Kane, you could have been rich. All you had to do was deliver her as agreed. Rather be poor with a clean conscience." "Conscience?" Blackwood laughed. "In my experience, conscience is just another word for weakness." He raised the pistol, aimed at Silas's head. The shot echoed through the hallway, but it was Blackwood who staggered, looking down in shock at the spreading red stain on his white shirt. Behind him, Evelyn stood with her smoking pistol, face carved from stone. "That's for Maria," she said. "And all the others." Blackwood tried to speak, but only blood came. He collapsed, those pale eyes already glazing. Evelyn didn't spare him another glance, moving to help Silas stand. "Can you walk? If it means getting out of here, I can dance." More men were coming up the main stairs. Tom Murphy met them halfway, his massive fists making short work of the first 2. Luis flanked them, knife flashing. In the chaos, Silas and Evelyn made it to the servants' stairs, where frightened girls waited. "Everyone out," Evelyn commanded. "Stay together. Run for the docks." They fled through the night, a strange procession of battered women and bloodied men. Behind them, Flames began to lick at the house's windows. Chen Wei's work. Silas realized. Leave nothing standing. At the docks, Mrs. Chen waited with a wagon. Hospital? She asked, seeing Silas's blood. No hospital. He gritted out. Too many questions. I know someone, Maria said quietly. It was the first time she'd spoken since leaving. A doctor who helps people like us. No questions. The doctor proved to be a woman. Dr. Sarah Winters, who'd been barred from official practice for having opinions while female. She worked on Silas in her kitchen, extracting the bullet with steady hands. You're lucky, she said. Inch to the left and we'd be having a different conversation. While she worked, Evelyn sat with the rescued girls, 12 in total, ranging from 14 to 20, each with their own story of how they'd ended up in Blackwood's house. What happens to us now? One asked. Whatever you want. Evelyn said firmly. Some of you have families to return to. Others, Dr. Winters knows people. Good people who'll help you start over. The choice is yours. Choice, Maria repeated, as if tasting a foreign word. I'd forgotten what that meant. Dawn was breaking when the doctor finished. Silas, bandaged and weak but alive, found Evelyn on the back porch, watching the sun paint the bay gold. Blackwood's dead, she said without turning. I killed him. He needed killing. Yes. She leaned into him carefully, mindful of his wound. But it doesn't end with him. There are others, the men in those documents. They'll just find new suppliers. Then we keep fighting. We? She looked up at him. You almost died tonight. Almost doesn't count. He kissed her forehead. Besides, someone needs to keep you from taking on every evil in California single-handed. Just California, despite everything. She smiled. I was thinking bigger. Over the next weeks, as Silas healed, they worked with Dr. Winters and progressive reformers to find placements for the rescued girls. Some went home, others found work in respectable establishments. Maria surprised everyone by announcing she wanted to study medicine. Like Dr. Winters, she said. Help people like she helped us. Garrett's articles continued to run, now supplemented by first-hand accounts from the rescued women. Public opinion began to shift. The respectable men named in Evelyn's documents found themselves shunned, their businesses failing, their political careers ending. A month after the rescue, Silas and Evelyn stood before a judge. A real one this time. Honest as far as anyone could tell. Their marriage was simple. Witnessed by Maria and Mrs. Chen, Dr. Winters and the dock workers who'd risked everything for strangers. Do you, Evelyn March, take this man? Kane, she interrupted. Evelyn Kane. March died with my husband. The judge smiled. Do you, Evelyn Kane, take this man? I do. They honeyed in a small cottage overlooking the Pacific, far from the city's noise and corruption. For a week, they pretended the world held only them, walking the beaches, making love with the windows open to sea breezes, planning futures that finally seemed possible. I want to write that book, Evelyn said one evening. But not just my story, all of their stories. Show people what really happens in those places. It'll be dangerous. The men you'll anger are already angry. Might as well give them good reason. She curled against him. Will you help? Always. They returned to find San Francisco changed. Blackwood's death had sent ripples through the underworld. Some operations shut down rather than risk exposure. Others dug deeper, became harder to find. The war was far from won, but battles were being won. Evelyn began her book, interviewing survivors, documenting horrors with a historian's precision and a survivor's compassion. Silas returned to honest work, but kept his connections alive, eyes and ears in the darkness, watching for the next Blackwood. One evening, as spring warmed the city, they sat on their small porch overlooking the bay. Evelyn was writing. Silas cleaning his guns. Old habits died hard. Maria had stopped by earlier, showing off her acceptance to a medical college that had finally agreed to take women. "Do you ever regret it?" Evelyn asked suddenly. "The life you could have had. Peaceful, uncomplicated. Do you regret killing your husband?" "No." "Then you have your answer." He set down the gun, pulled her into his lap. "Peace is overrated. I'd rather have purpose." "And is that what I am? Your purpose? You're my home," he said simply. "Everything else is just details." As night fell over San Francisco, they held each other. Two warriors in a war that might never end, but was worth fighting anyway. In the distance, ships' bells rang the hour. And somewhere in the city, girls who'd been property were learning to be people again. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Those were for people who'd never seen real darkness. But it was theirs. Earned in blood and tears and the courage to keep fighting when surrender would have been easier. And for Silas Kane and Evelyn March Kane, that was more than enough. It was everything. Thank you for listening to this tale from the Wild West. Where are you enjoying this story from? Please comment below, and let's connect with fellow listeners around the world. Don't forget to subscribe to From Wild West channel and share your thoughts about Silas and Evelyn's journey. Your comments help bring our community of Western story lovers together.